What is the golden ratio? To quote Wikipedia, in mathematics, two quantities are in the golden ratio if their ratio is the same as the ratio of their sum to the larger of the two quantities. So if you're already feeling alienated from that, which I expect you are, don't worry, hang in there. We'll get the complex explanations out of the way first, and then we'll whittle down to the more simple visual guides. Using the golden ratio will eventually become second nature in your design habits. So, as you've no doubt noted, the principle is based upon mathematics. To elaborate further, the golden ratio is closely related to the Fibonacci sequence, which was a staple principle in Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code. In the Fibonacci sequence, every number after the first two is the sum of the two preceding ones. Now this sounds complicated too, but if I show you the example, you'll see that it's fairly easy in its principle. So here's the example. We have 1 as the next number. We have 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89 and 144. So you'll see that we start with the number 1. The next number is 1 also, since that is the sum of the previous numbers, or number in this case, since there's only 1. Following this, we see the number 2, because that is the sum of the previous two 1s. Next, we see the number 3, because 3 is the sum of the previous 1 and 2. Now we see the number 5 next, because 5 is the sum of 2 and 3. So on and so forth. So this is the Fibonacci sequence, and it's this which is the backbone of the golden ratio. Now that we've seen the underlying numerical form of the Fibonacci sequence, next we'll go on to explore how it interconnects with the golden ratio visually. The golden ratio is believed by many to be a natural blueprint of beauty. It's a pattern that's been observed in many things in life, mostly in things with great aesthetic appeal. As such, the principle has been adopted by countless artists, architects and designers, to name but a few, throughout the ages. The golden ratio isn't without its criticism, however. Countless professionals in their field disregard the golden ratio as being nature's pattern of perfection, or something that should be used in a bid to achieve perfection. They simply accept it as a pattern which is common in many things, whilst other things have their own unique characteristics, which on the whole is undeniable. There are no hard and fast rules in design. Freedom of expression is the very essence of art, so we shouldn't have to, nor feel the need to design within the constraints of any form of template. That being said, as designers, we need to accept the ways and methods of the industry. Use of the golden ratio is absolutely rife in design, so it's something we really need to know about, regardless of whether we use it or not. It itself is a phenomenon of art and design, not to mention one of a gargantuan universal proportion. It's worth considering too that many people have little regard for anything remotely mystical, and so something like the golden ratio would be considered only momentarily. When it comes to logo design specifically, the golden ratio, together with its mystique, facts and theories, is something we do need to harbour, since mysteria throughout the times has been a fundamental trait of worldly symbolism. So in our quest to harvest as much information as we can as logo designers, the golden ratio is something we must take into regard and strive to understand. To understand, we need to analyse it thoroughly. With complete knowledge acquired, we can then decide if it's fit for our needs as designers. The Fibonacci sequence is at play throughout the entire fabric of nature, From plants, animals to our very selves, the sequence expresses itself through the golden ratio. Plants express it through growth points, points where branches split, and patterns in petals. The total number of petals on a flower too is often likely to be one of the numbers found in the Fibonacci sequence. The human body also follows the numbers 1, 2, 3 and 5. We have one nose, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 3 parts to each limb and 5 digits per hand and foot. If we first analyse the human ear, we can see clearly that it looks like the golden spiral. The human face too is proportionate and has distributed features which reflect the golden spiral and the golden ratio. The ear and the golden spiral looks like a fetus, the very essence of life. The egg too, also the essence of life, is in perfect reflection of the golden spiral. Many other living creatures harness the golden ratio, dictating their appearance and overall beauty. Our weather reflects the phenomenon, displaying golden spirals in hurricanes and cloud formations. The golden ratio is not only present in the things we see on a daily basis, but things which are present on a microscopic level also. Above all, entire galaxies aren't exempt, since they too hold the form of a golden spiral. The golden ratio has been an underlying staple of popular art for centuries. Here we see Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Through this image we can observe that the form follows the golden spiral and its segments. The torso fills the largest most square, with the spiral curling into both sides of the head and tightening into the facial features, with the nose as the central point. This focus places emphasis on the central area of the face, which is of course the smile of Mona Lisa. Here we see Johann Vermeer's portrait of a girl with a pearl earring. This composition follows the path of the golden spiral more tightly, resulting in an interesting and aesthetically pleasing pose. Again, the square segments accommodate the parts of the piece, but in a slightly different fashion. In this instance, we see that both torso and face are accommodated within the largest square, with the spiral tightening into the eye/forehead area, capturing the gaze of the girl. Here we see the Sacrament of the Last Supper by Salvador Dali. Using the overlaid golden spiral for reference, we can see that the torso up top with the outstretched hands shows the path of the spiral being followed. The spiral curls in to make the kneeling person at the bottom left a primary focus. Due to the partial symmetry of this composition, the same also applies to the kneeling figure on the right also. Though to veer away from perfect symmetry, this is slightly out in contrast to the figure on the left. In a similar composition, arguably a more famous one, we see Da Vinci's The Last Supper. This composition too can be broken down to observe segments of the painting which indicate the golden ratio being followed. This painting in particular can be analysed at great depths to reveal Da Vinci's stringency of the golden ratio protocol. Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi utilises the golden ratio too. Here you can see the two primary elements, face and hand, broken down into golden ratio segments. The head sees one part of the face in shadow, adhering to the golden ratio protocol, with a divide at the eyebrows drawing attention to the gaze. The hand is composed to include part of the wrist also to adhere to the golden ratio. Secondary, the element central on the chest and the glass ball in the hand also gives a nod to the golden ratio. Not to mention the tiny circles of light in the ball, which are placed in specific calculated positions. So this is the golden ratio in action in art, particularly in Da Vinci's work. We could quite literally spend hours drawing lines on top of these pictures, finding the golden ratio in action in hundreds of different ways and instances in the tiniest of details. The paintings are quite literally riddled with the golden ratio everywhere, and not by coincidence, but planned, meticulous decision. This is how entrenched Leonardo da Vinci was in the principle, and how much painstaking effort he made to take full advantage of it, incorporating it into his work. Needless to say, the golden ratio is still being used today with full effect. Most importantly, it's used in logo design, which is our focus herein. So we'll be exploring how we can use the principle in our designs. The golden ratio is rife in a wide range of graphic design applications. It's used for the purpose of designing individual elements, and most importantly, overall layout of those elements. Here we see a website layout with the golden spiral overlaid for reference. We can clearly see the body of the text within the largest square, with the graphic on the portion to the right. The graphic sees the legs in a second largest square, with a faint background crowd, with basketball, hoop, arms and head showing within others, coincidentally also getting smaller too as the spiral curls in. Here we see a cover of a magazine. The most important part of the main graphic is featured within the largest square, here in the portion of the second largest square, albeit a rectangle in design shape, whittling down to the logo and smaller details within the other squares as the spiral makes its way inwards. In this illustration, we see the less relevant parts of the image in the larger circle, with the more relevant images present as the spiral gets tighter. In the large square, we see mostly black of a darkened landscape with green sky above. The two squares above, of the second and third largest size, contain birds following the path of the spiral, which finally meets the subject's head roughly at the centre. This design shows most of the less relevant faint landscape, sun and couple of objects in the large square, and our attention is drawn to the right hand side as the spiral makes its way inwards to feature a vivid tree, laptop, documents, which also concludes the overall function of the image. Next, we see one of the countless movie posters which adopts the golden ratio for layout. The Mad Max poster sees the most relevant focus object in the centremost part of the golden spiral, with the second and third largest squares featuring the arid landscape and figure of the main character breaking the skyline, which also happens to separate upper and lower squares. The upper largest square accommodates the all-important film title in a large bold font, together with a tagline situated above. We can also consider the same graphic with the golden spiral vertically flipped. This results in the figure being the centre of attention and the centremost part of the golden spiral. Some might say the main character is a lot more important than the car, so there lies the justification in this layout. In the Star Wars poster, we can clearly see the characters' heads following the path of the spiral. The less relevant character face sits in the centre of the spiral, with the more dominant male and female characters who are paired as a unit next on the path. Another less apparent character head features below, sitting at a point which bolsters the fact that the spiral's path is being used as a guide. The spiral tightens in to draw primary attention to the figure in the middle, which is emphasised by a starburst of light which sits in the centre of the spiral. So that covers but a few examples of how the golden ratio is harnessed as a loose means to arrange elements for the purpose of achieving what many graphic designers consider to be an aesthetically pleasing layout. It should go without saying that the big brands, above all, are the most likely to pay the utmost precise attention to their logo. At least that's what's expected. In many cases, this is true. Large businesses will hire talented graphic designers to develop their brand who have thorough knowledge of how to employ the golden ratio. So let's take a look at a small selection of big players in business who use the golden ratio in their logos. Here we see the Adidas logo, The symbol is composed of shapes utilising two circles from the golden ratio. The large upper circle is used for the base of the shape, and the lower circle measures and dictates the height of the whole logo, including text. There are 5 instances of the smaller circles which dictate the curved shape of the points and the spacing between them. Next, we see the all-familiar Apple logo, with a large part of the apple shape and position of the bite dictated by the golden spiral on the diagonal. The golden ratio of 1.618 is also applied to the height of the apple and leaf. The symbol utilises 4 instances of the same sized circle. In this case, it's denoted by number 8, which is used for the contour at the base of the apple, the bite mark, and the leaf. In the BP logo, we see 2 different size circles borrowed from the golden ratio. A and B denotes the radius of these 2 circles, which contains the starburst and circular leaf arrangement. The National Geographic logo is very simplistic and primitive, yet sure enough it employs the golden ratio. The ratio of the height, marked A, in relation to the width, marked B, gives the golden number 1.618. In a similar manner to the BP logo, the Pepsi logo uses only 2 circles from the golden ratio, marked A and B. Circle A defines the size of the outer circle and the symbol as a whole, and the inner smaller circle dictates a large part of the inner figurative smile shape. The Twitter logo utilises the large circle of the golden ratio for the breast of the bird symbol. The wing feathers and head shapes are dictated by the use of a total of 5 same-sized, smaller circles borrowed from the golden ratio. So, whilst you might otherwise have assumed that these kinds of logos, particularly the very simple ones, are perhaps often conceived without careful thought and attention, you can see that there is actually a firm structure in place. Experienced designers place the golden ratio in high regard. If used correctly, the golden ratio needn't be restrictive, but highly beneficial in creating a balanced, proportionate, and aesthetic design.